Well, hi everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show. I figured I'd jump on a couple of minutes early and get things started because we have a lot of weather to look at ahead. Even though it actually the weather right now across much of the U.S. is
Ready
on.
to fall
Whoops.
into some serious savings on wireless service? Well,
uh,
you're going to fall head over heels.
I didn't want that. Okay, hold on a second, folks. I'm trying to run the chat. It's not that I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, but I do know what I'm doing. I'm running the chat on my phone at the same time, so this way I can look at the maps when I have them up. Now I can see the chat. Hey, Ryan Ford, thanks so much for hitting super chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Good, nice to see you here. And by the way, that's a reminder. Let me just take care of some business right off the top. We'll get it out of the way. First off, 7 p.m. on Wednesday, November the 20th, I will be at the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey. So by all means, do come. 7 p.m., Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey. And we'll talk about the upcoming winter. We could talk about the past hurricane season, whatever you'd like to talk about. But do come. It's open to all. You don't have to live in Bayonne to attend, and we'll have a lot of fun. We always have a lot of fun on these library chats. Okay, so the other thing I just wanted to remind everybody about with everything going on in the upcoming winter, which seems to want to get underway a little early, let's make sure we download the free weather apps. There's the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app on Google Play for those of you who live and die by Android devices, which is what I have. Then there are those of you who can't live without an iPhone. Well, there is an iPhone version of the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee app, and that is also absolutely free. And you can add a second app to that family, and that for those of you who have Android devices, be sure to download the Angry Weatherman, which is my buddy Ben Scott, who takes care of my nycweathernow.com website, and you can have both apps at the same time. He lends his own perspective on things. We usually line up fairly well. Sometimes we disagree, but most of the time we're in sync. And if by chance one app is down, you got the other one as a backup. And of course, for those of you who really want to get into weather, you can jump on my 24/7 weather platform on Patreon. It's patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And that's a subscription plan that starts at $2 a month with higher tiers available for those of you who are really in need of having a hand holding during the winter season. I can certainly provide that. So I thought, well, I was going to try to start off with this map, but it's being evil on me. So let's get to it here. And what I've pulled up is this is through Thursday evening, and it's the 72-hour probability of a whole inch of snow. And you can see that the blue areas are 40% or higher. So at least for now and early on in the game, we're not seeing some, 60, 70, 80% numbers for an inch. But also, I think the most important takeaway for me is the fact of where the southern edge of this is. And right now it's lying fairly far inland, okay? It crosses Maine down through southeastern New Hampshire, much of Massachusetts, except for the northwest, New York State. You have to go a fair distance up the Hudson Valley to the upper Hudson Valley, almost to I-90 to get into that probability area, and then extending south and west into southwestern Pennsylvania. And of course, you see those higher amounts. And again, this is early in the game. Just going to put up the 4-inch. There's not a whole lot showing up here with regards to 4-inch amounts on the screen here. So again, it is early. I have been saying from the get-go here, those of you who were on yesterday morning on our Sunday morning show, which is going to be a regular thing now. I'm going to do the live stream on Sunday at 10 a.m. A bit of coffee with Chaffee on a Sunday morning, and get your weather fill. I found it. I was it was nice, easy, and relaxing, and I actually really enjoyed doing it. So, and I might even extend it to Saturday morning because it's just easier on me on the weekends to do live streams early in the day. I have a lot of energy early in the day, not so much come the evening time, whereas during the week when I'm working, it's sort of in reverse. So we've been saying since through the weekend, I wasn't really particularly overexcited about this first weather event, and I'm still not after what I saw today in terms of the weather models. So first off, with respect to the surface map, we do have a couple of cold fronts, and here's the thing: you are in a situation right now in the wintertime. Sometimes when you get these setups, it's a matter of having two things happen. You have to have a cold front move on through, and then once that front moves through, you get a wave to develop on it. And the trick is that wherever you happen to be, you want to be in a position where the cold air gets in first and then the precip from the wave. So you sort of have to have everything kind of timing out just perfectly. The front has to come through, enough cold air has to bleed in, and then you got to get the wave to come up. If it's off, you wind up, which is what usually winds up for at least the I-95 corridor anyway, and um, that is you get a front that doesn't quite make it, or it gets through barely. You don't get into enough cold air. The rain runs up and through it, and then the cold air comes in on the backside at the point where the precip is about to shut off. And as far as snow is concerned, you get little or nothing. So that's the dilemma for the I-95 corridor. Usually it winds up that the rain comes in before the cold air. I would say that happens about 85% of the time, and the other 10 or 15% is when you wind up getting some snow and sometimes some substantial snow out of it. And I think this is going to be one of those cases where the rain is going to play through and shut off as after, and then the cold air comes in on the backside. We do have to get two fronts through here, and if you can see, we've got temperatures ahead of the first front that's coming through tomorrow in the 50s and 60s left over from today. So I don't think we're going to cool down very much tonight. And then that front plays through. You've got a slightly chillier air mass behind it, where temperatures right now are generally in the 40s. And then you have the Arctic boundary, which is further north. And behind that, you have temperatures, as you look back up through the Dakotas and on up into Canada, you're looking at temperatures that are in the 20s and teens. That air is destined to come in behind the wave. And that is going to be here for Friday and for Saturday. So we'll start with tonight's, we'll look at the satellite loop to begin with. And watching the flow, you can pretty much see what's happening with the upper flow, that sort of, kind of gentle west to east flow that runs across the country. When I say gentle, I mean it's this sort of very broad, almost bowl-like feature. You've got a little bit of tropical moisture here, not a whole lot, but you're getting some tropical moisture building up in the southeast and over Florida and off the Florida coast. It's not really producing very much in terms of precip, although if you look on the visible there in the last few frames, you can see the cloud tops blowing up, so there are some thunderstorms there. Also, I noticed, take a look out here out in the Atlantic. We're not going to be able to see it until just for the visible shots, but there's actually a low-level circulation there. If you look carefully on the first two frames that spin through, there they go. You see that little turning there in that little area of blue I just drew in? So there's some kind of low-level circulation there, but there's nothing really with it. It's just some low clouds spinning around. Maybe if this were back in September, we'd have some kind of tropical storm out of that or something. But just kind of fascinating to see that go by. We do have a bit of a flow that's coming out of the subtropics from the Pacific across Mexico, but again, nothing exceptionally strong. And what we're looking at really is short waves that are just sort of moving along. Hang on one second, folks. Please don't tell me that I just, oh, you know what? Hang on, we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. I don't have my mouse with me, and unfortunately, that creates a problem. So let me come back. Oh boy. Let's see if I can just bring up the US. My apologies, folks. All right, let's try this. I somehow accidentally shut all my windows here. It's I I don't have my mouse with me with my laptop, and unfortunately, that leaves me kind of at the mercy of my finger, my fat finger hitting the wrong key, and I think that's what I did here. So here's the water vapor imagery loop, and you're seeing the issues here. The same idea. You've got that flow, that northwest flow, and there's a series of short waves that we have in that northwest flow. They're moving along. One that's coming down from Canada, another one that is now headed into the east. So they really represent the two fronts and the Arctic air, the well, or certainly cold, cold Canadian air, certainly that's moving southeastward. We don't really see too many obvious. When we saw those big storms, so those obvious big twists in there, and that, of course, indicative of very strong short waves. You don't really see that here. Okay, the systems here are not especially strong. So they're going to move along. You're going to get whatever it is you're going to get from them, and that will be about it. Now, the national radar tonight is really fairly quiet. You've got a little bit of rain shower activity starting to break out in parts of western New York, northwestern PA through a narrow band in Ohio and Indiana and Illinois, and also up in through northern Michigan. You have to go back into that cold air behind the Arctic boundary. You start to get into a little bit of snow as you move back westward up in parts of Nebraska and into Montana. But other than that, it's really pretty quiet. And we mentioned that tropical moisture that's over Florida. There's a little bit of shower and thunderstorm activity in parts of southwest Florida and also along the central Florida coast. It looks like up around Cape Canaveral. And that really is about it as far as precip is concerned. So it's a pretty tame situation across the United States. So let's look at where we're going and what we think is going to happen. And again, as we look ahead to the next round of weather systems, two cold fronts, a wave, and then a cold high coming down. And here's your first cold front as it approaches for tomorrow. There really isn't much with it. You get a little bit of shower activity. The stuff that's in upstate New York and extends back down to the lower Ohio Valley, that's going to all pretty much dry out as it moves eastward. The stuff that creeps up along the coast over tomorrow morning in parts of Virginia up to southern New Jersey and then eventually into Long Island and southern Connecticut. That just moves on out to the east. The front goes by, and then in comes your high. Now, here comes this next front for Wednesday night and Thursday, and this sets the table for this wave that we've been talking about. And again, you've got cold air that tries to get in here. And we talked yesterday about the fact that you have the high trying to drop, part of it's trying to drop southward into the southern plains. The other part is trying to move eastward. It looks like yesterday we had models on pretty wide extremes with the icon model, for example, dropping that high almost straight south, making a rather deep wave going up into the northeast. The GFS was in the other extreme where it was taking all the cold air in the east, overwhelming everything, and just keeping all this precip way south. Both models here are wrong, and there's a bit of a compromise in order where you're getting some of a push south, but you're also getting some of a push east. And this is what happens now. You get this wave that comes out, and you see it here. This is Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. Remember, we are now on standard time. So, your frontal boundary is lying just about here, and it's waiting for a wave to develop. And that wave, when it moves through, will kick the boundary, the frontal boundary through. And then you've got this big cold high that is going to build in behind it. Now, of course, on the edge of that frontal boundary, you do have some snow, and you can see it showing up in parts of western New York in a very narrow band up through northern Ohio, southeastern Michigan, northeastern Indiana. Not a whole lot of it here. And then as the wave moves eastward, you really don't get a whole lot of development. You've got a 10-12 low that is sitting near Portland, Maine by 1 a.m. on Friday. And you'll notice that, at least along the coast, there really isn't much in terms of, there's hardly any snow. There's some leftover rain here. I should probably use the radar rather than the total precip. I think that makes a bit more sense to do. So let me just switch to the radar echoes. And there you have it. So if you believe this, you get this area of precip that comes in late Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. You go up from Albany northward, Vermont, New Hampshire, except the extreme southeast. They may change over to snow before it ends. Western New York near the lakes, northwest PA. You wind up with a bit of snow here and then rain everywhere else. But it just is not the most impressive system in the world. And when you look at some of the other models, you kind of get this idea that this is just going to be whatever it is that it's going to be, and then we're done with it. And now the backside of this is the very cold air that comes in behind it, and it is going to be cold. I mean, we're talking temperatures that are going to be down in the teens and 20s over a very, very large area. And hang on one second here. I'm just going to try and draw that. So, you're getting northerly winds coming down on the backside of the low. The setup, by the way, with those winds, it brings down cold air from northeastern Canada. When you have this kind of a flow that sets up where your isobars are northerly and the wind is north or north-northwest, that's usually how the Northeast sees some of its uh, coldest air. And that cold air is allowed to get pretty far to the south. This frontal boundary makes it down into northern Florida and down into the Gulf states. So it's a very chilly high indeed. And we'll even look at some numbers in terms of low temperatures here. I had them all set up, and unfortunately, everything got erased. So we'll bring them up again. By the way, if you look at the U.S. national map in terms of watches and warnings, there aren't any. Okay, it's very quiet, except for those dense fog advisories up in the Pacific Northwest. So I mean, at some point it's going to get busier, but at least for now, it's pretty quiet. So let's just take a check of, just want to show you where we're going to wind up by the time we get to Saturday morning as far as low temperatures are concerned. Here we go. So loading it up. We'll go to Friday morning first. And you'll notice the numbers for Friday morning are pretty cold up in New England, getting temperatures down by Friday morning in the upper 20s in the Hudson Valley, low 30s down into New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and you've got 20s and 30s going down into westernmost North Carolina, west and north across Tennessee and Kentucky, and throughout much of the Great Lakes. You're seeing a lot of teens here. By Saturday morning, it's going to be really cold everywhere. You're talking about 20s. You head up around New York City, probably in the upper 20s to around 30. The warmer urban areas are always going to have a struggle for some reason. I don't know if that 32 number that you see there is probably LaGuardia, which is why it's so high. But I would think that you probably will see temperatures in New York City below 30, same for Newark. And you're looking at teens across much of upstate New York and back through Pennsylvania and on up into central and northern New England, 20s near the coast, but definitely teens inland. This is a pretty cold air high that's coming down, and the southern extent of the freezing mark goes clear down into northern Georgia, northern Alabama, northern central Mississippi. A lot of these areas have already seen their first 32-degree readings of the season so far. Now, once this is done, we are going to be setting up for something that I think is a bit more important, but I want to touch on the upper air first. Uh, we'll let's see, what do I want to do here? So, okay, before we even do that, let's stay with this first system for a moment. If you're going to take a wave like this, I look, I'm going to put this up, and I'm going to admit right off the bat, these tools are horrible. Okay, when I say the tools are horrible, not tropical tidbits, just the snow map, the concept of the snow maps themselves are are just not good. They don't work very well. Where I would use them is just try and use it as a takeaway of where maybe the southern edge of the accumulating snow might be. You can see, at least on the GFS, it's not that far south. If you look at a couple of the other models, the Icon model late this afternoon was interesting because it was a little flatter, which made it a little bit colder at the southern edge of the snow. Is a little bit further south, even getting into northwest New Jersey. But you can't have it both ways. If you wind up with a flatter wave with a colder look, you're going to wind up with less precip. And that's what you're seeing here in terms of what the Icon is producing, the German model, which has a flat wave, fairly flat looking wave here that goes by. I mean, it's almost hard to find. And this is remarkable considering that the Icon yesterday had a fairly wrapped up low in New England near Boston, Portland, Maine by Friday morning. And now it's got this very flat looking low going by with a little bit of snow on the northern edge. And then you see most of what that's down in the southern stream brings some fairly decent rain across Kentucky and Tennessee and through the Carolinas and then offshore, where another wave develops over the weekend. And you got a pretty decent looking low center there, well to the southeast of the Carolinas by the time you get to Saturday. So I'm not this is something that the GFS was showing back a couple of days ago. Now suddenly the Icon, which has never shown it, is showing it now. But the overall look to me here says that you're not. I'm not really impressed. I'm not understanding why there's been this sort of hysteria over this. I think it was set off by some of these snow maps on some of the models, particularly the Canadian. If you look at the Canadian model today, here's where it's got that wave, a pretty well-defined wave off the New Jersey coast by 1 a.m. Friday. And then it's got a 96 low in the Gulf of Maine. At this point, by the way, the precip is over with. You got to be careful when you look at these maps because this is actual, it's indicating rain and snowfall amounts that fell in the prior 6 hours. It's not showing you what the radar is going to look like. So in reality, the back edge of the precip is already gone from New York City and points north and east. So you got to be really, really careful when you're looking at these maps. You want to make sure if you're going to you look at these radar charts, which they're definitely labeled radar on them as opposed to the rainfall amounts. And you look at the Canadian, which is actually somewhat similar to the European in terms of where the southern edge of the snow, getting it to touch northern New Jersey. So if you want to make a case, you can say that the maybe you could make a case for the fact that the southern edge of the snow might get to about Route 84. I really have a tough time seeing it much further south than that unless you get this cold air to come in faster and it pushes the front further south and you wind up with something more substantial where you get cold enough and then you just get some snow. I do want to let you guys know, by the way, because this was running around on the internet today, and a few of you have mentioned it to me, but Pivotal Weather, and I did speak with them today, and their website is home.pivotalweather.com, and they said it was okay to use their maps. I'm just going to just really quick, they do have a whole section here with the European model that is kind of useful. I haven't really had time to do it. They have the snow maps. They did say in an email message to me that we can use it. And I really want to just give them a big shout out and a big thank you. That's pivotalweather.com. Pivotal weather.com. And just to show you here from the day run today, in terms of what it shows for snowfall, I want to make sure, let me just make sure you guys can see this. It's not quite there on the frame, but there it is. I haven't seen where they have it just kind of cut into sectors. They just have this whole US map. But you kind of look at the Canadians' snowfall, and that purple area is 6. The blue, the lightest shading of blue is an inch, okay? And then you've got gray showing just fractions of an inch. So let's use the 1 inch line. And again, the European, which has a slightly colder look to it from what the other models have, would suggest that we're looking here at a Route 84, if you want to make the case that it'll be a little bit colder. But I don't. I think the hysteria was really is being driven by the fact that it's the first snow of the season and everybody just kind of jumped off the deep end. I don't know why, but you know, I guess it's part of the territory now. Everything gets, I think what usually winds up happening is that you look at all the models, you find the one that's got the most apocalyptic Armageddon conclusion, and that's the one that some people will post and they'll write around it. And then, of course, I will get all the forecast shoppers coming back to me asking me about it and why I'm not saying the same thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And well, that's kind of how it happens. Uh, those of you who might be new to the channel here will come to realize soon enough that this is very much a drama-free environment, and we like to definitely keep it that way. By the way, I am watching you guys on the chat, so if you do have any questions, you can throw them up because I can see them. Since I've actually figured out how to walk and chew gum at the same time, where I can see both the chat and do my maps. Of course, I keep with my fat finger eliminating most of my maps. So I'm going to show you the upper air, and I want to use this as a point of transition with regards to something that I think is probably a little bit more important as far as weather is concerned for early next week, because I mentioned yesterday that I was a little bit more intrigued by what was going on in the models for early next week, and the overnight models have taken me also down that particular road, and even the dayside models today continue to lead me to want to pay close attention to early next week. So starting off that week, and this week, of course, and we've got trough in the east. You can also see something that I've said is very important to keep an eye on when you want a trough in the east. You look for that trough that is down near Hawaii along about 160, which is what we have here. There's a nice cutoff sitting south of the Aleutians. You've got ridging off the Pacific Northwest coast, and then of course you kind of connect the dots here. If you follow the flow around the trough in the east, you can see where our air is coming from, straight out of northern Canada. So there's no shocker here that we're seeing cold temperatures. And also remember the time of year, we're at the beginning of November. So to have nighttime lows in the teens and 20s, which is what we may see at the end of the week in many places in the interior Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic, that's cold for this time of year. It might not necessarily raise an eyebrow in January or February, but at the beginning of November, you're talking about anomalies that are running a solid 10 or more degrees below the seasonal average. So that is pretty. That's a fairly impressive shot of cold air that's coming down. It's not record-setting, but it's impressive enough. Now, going forward this week, of course, we talk about the fact that you've got this trough that's swinging around in the east. You can see it here. The models have been going back and forth on how sharp it is. I have the Canadian here. I want to switch away from that and go to the GFS. But you can see that there is a certain sharpness to it. The GFS was lacking this sharpness over the last couple of days, but it finally came around to it today. The icon was probably the sharpest, and that was wrong too. But there's a sharp enough trough there that is swinging on through for Thursday, and it goes on by. And of course, you still can see this connection that runs from Canada. You've got this big upper low that is dominating weather south of the Aleutians with this trough all the way down near Hawaii. That pops up the ridge now, which is right along the west coast. And when you look at teleconnections, and we look at the teleconnection snapshot, which we can do, you'll see that the Pacific North America Index, which is a snapshot look at the overall pressure pattern, it's telling you that there's a ridge in the west and a trough in the east. The one thing I'll say, remember, and I've said this before, and I think it needs to be hammered home, those indices cover very large geographic areas. So when you say a trough in the east, that could be anywhere from 90 degrees to 70 degrees. And where that trough is makes a huge difference in terms of the weather outcome. When you say a ridge in the west, same thing. Is it inland of the West Coast? Is it on the West Coast? Is it off the West Coast? These are all very, very important. So you don't, it's not a magic bullet just because you have that. It means that, oh boy, we're going to have a big storm, or we're going to have a lot of snow, or we're going to have all sorts of crazy weather. It's a snapshot. You have to look at where these troughs and ridges are. So the thing that intrigued me about the early next week is if you watch what happens after this lifts up, you've got another strong upper low that forms in Canada here. You still have this trough at 160, and that means you still have this ridge along the west coast. And in fact, you have an upper high that's cutting off here across California and into the eastern Pacific. So this setup here has a flavor of dynamics of strong dynamics to it. And what I'm watching is the fact that you're seeing that upper low kind of take a wholesale plunge down with a really solid shortwave trough swinging into the east. The GFS has been handling this in different ways in the last several runs, and I suspect that we're going to continue to see a lot of dancing around of the models early next week with this. And the one model that seemed to really go hog wild with this was the European, and the European from last night. We're going to take a look at the European from last night, and it really just went crazy with this, where it dropped, swings that trough through the east. Of course, you see it there. That's it for Thursday night, and then into Friday. And then as that lifts up, you get this next wholesale upper low in Hudson's Bay that just literally just the whole thing drops down. And suddenly you've got this wrapped up cutoff low sitting over Chesapeake Bay with a corresponding very deep surface low off the East Coast. Now, look, I don't know if it's going to really work out this way. What I'm looking at is the fact that I'm seeing, when I see this look, this really amplified look with deep troughs and deep and strong ridges and energy that looks like it's getting ready to come around, yeah, you have to pay attention to this. And I think it's wise that we watch early next week as this system drops on in. I don't think it makes a difference when you look at individual runs. You might see one run have something in one spot in one run. You'll have the same model will have it in another spot. You're going to see these movements around. I think the thing to focus on is the fact that you've got all this energy in the east that's going to want to try and dig and pile on into a system along the East Coast. And if it winds up that it's off the East Coast where there's no consequence, that's how it winds up. It's just that I certainly wouldn't say that right now based on what we have. I wouldn't say anything really in terms of what the outcome. What I will tell you is if this look does materialize, is the fact that it is going to be cold. This is going to be there's going to be plenty of cold air here in the Northeast down into the northern Mid-Atlantic states for something to happen. So there's going to be plenty of cold air to work with. It'll be a situation where, unlike what we'll see for Thursday into Friday, where you're going to see the warm air, the cold air racing with the precip, with for most places the precip winning out, and then the cold air comes in afterward. In this particular case, you're going to wind up the other way around. You're going to wind up with the cold air getting in there first, probably sometime later Sunday or Monday, and then the energy comes in after that. So definitely going to be that might be one of those instances where you wind up seeing the cold air winning out. So the takeaway from all of this tonight is the following. I still remain very much underwhelmed with Thursday night into Friday. Um, if you wind up getting a cheap thrill, you wind up getting a cheap thrill. I think the best chances for anything accumulation wise will be well north of Route 84 in the Northeast from 84 across Pennsylvania, and you start going north into upstate New York and up into New England. I think you have your shot for accumulating snow from that. Then we get into some very cold air for Friday and Saturday, take a little bit of a bounce on Sunday before you get another round of cold air coming in for early next week. And beyond that, we watch to see how models handle the upper features early next week, because I think, again, that is, that's going to be front and center in my view. Who would have thought that we're in the first week of November, and we're actually looking at two weather systems. Even if we wind up with nothing out of them, the fact that we have them at all might be at least an indicator that this winter is going to be a little different than what we saw last winter. So, Ryan Kane, how cold will daytime temperatures be early next week? Well, that depends. I mean, if you get that whole upper low to come down, even if you don't wind up with any kind of precip event ahead of it, you could certainly see a day or two with that where temperatures are going to be, not much out of the 30s in New York City, which for this time of year that's a big anomaly. Okay, that is a big gap below average. No, Tim, I'm not angry Ben, but uh, but he's not angry necessarily in a bad way. Okay, that's just his thing. He's a good man. Um, let's see. Just running back through the chat. Reaver, did you ask me how cold for New York City? I think you did. Look, we're going to have Saturday, probably no higher than Friday and Saturday, low 40s or close to 40 for highs, lows down in the upper 20s. That's not too shabby for the beginning of November. It really isn't. By the way, Nick Cortez, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it there. I'm sorry, is my mic peaking a little bit? I'm sorry about that. Uh, I wish I had seen that sooner. It also, yeah, I can see it now. I don't know why it's doing that. That might be a little better, I hope. I apologize for that. Sometimes me moving around my laptop from place to place, and then I move the mic, so then there's a problem with that. I'm still seeing it peak a little bit. See if I can get it to minimize. Oh, you want to see the teleconnections? Okay, I will bring you the teleconnections. Can you guys let me know if you're still, I don't think you're hearing any static, but my levels might still be a little bit high, and for that I apologize. That's just, one of the frustrating things about Windows 10 is that it resets your audio on a regular basis, and that's not good. All right, so let's go to the teleconnections. Again, remember with these folks that the teleconnections are snapshots. They're not model indicators. When the next model run comes out, you're going to see the teleconnections will be different. They change every day with the model. So let's take a look. And what you're seeing is now remember we talked about the big ridge in the west and you've got that the PNA, which is now about to go positive and go strongly positive as we go through the weekend and into next week. So this is the PNA where you see those spikes up near the top over plus 200. That is for Monday and Tuesday of next week. The NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, which I have always thought is an overstated indicator, is slightly positive. It's not crazy positive. It's slightly positive through the weekend, and then it actually gets down close to the neutral line. Interestingly enough, when we get to around November 12th or so. That sounds like it coincides with the development of some type of Atlantic low. The one thing that is the for winter weather lovers that's a real positive here is that EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation. That is strongly negative right now and rises a little bit, but it's still fairly strongly negative and then gets a little stronger in the negative camp. So when that EPO is negative, that's usually a good indicator for cold weather moving through the continental United States. And if you're going to combine that with an positive PNA with a Pacific Ridge in the west, that kind of tells you that the cold is actually going to be, your trough is going to be in the east. So that cold is going to get into the eastern part of the United States. So listen, if you have these teleconnections to work with during December, January, and February, and you're looking for some snow possibilities, not too shabby to have, I think. So again, at least from the snapshot view from the overnight model runs, uh, you you can see why the European maybe did what it did, and the GFS to a lesser extent did the same thing. I was more interested in the fact that the upper airs of both models were very similar. That was the striking thing about last night's run. That both upper airs on both models, they weren't identical, but they were very similar, and I think that was very important to see. It gave me at least a feeling of consistency of what might be coming down the road. Um, do Paul Roman, do I see us progressing toward that colder trend? Yes, I mean, certainly through this week, especially after Thursday, we're going to get this 2 day shot of cold air for Friday into Saturday. We'll still be chilly on Sunday, but temperatures will rebound instead of being highs only, say, from New Jersey to southern New England and nearby. When you're talking highs in the upper 30s and low 40s, you're talking about temperatures maybe bouncing back up toward the upper 40s to around 50. Now that's still below average by a bit, but it is still also a bounce. Yes, Reaver, that EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, that to me is the most important one. You want that in negative territory. Okay, that creates a pressure pattern that shifts cold air into the Canada and into the continental United States. And if you can have it strong, negative strong enough, and you've got the Pacific Ridge in there to some extent, you're going to get that cold air to come into the eastern part of the United States. Ryan Ford, was the day run of the European as bullish as it was the overnight? I thought, whether the night run was maybe a little bit. Both runs were dynamic. The night run I thought was more dynamic, but the day run was not inconsistent with it. I would expect model runs to go back and forth in terms of strength. You're going to have some runs are going to come in stronger, and then other runs are going to come in deeper. One run's going to have the storm a little bit to the left. The other one might have it a little bit to the right. As long as they have the general flavor right now, let them dance around. Okay, let them dance around and do what they're going to do. And because here we go. The mic is still crackling. That's just dandy. I wish I could understand why it was doing that. I've got my settings. If you guys can let me know here, I'm going to let me check my settings one more time. And Peter Bicker, I will get to your question in a moment. So is the mic still crackling now? Can you guys hear me? Because I turned my levels down as far as I can take them down without actually shutting them off. All right, so please let me know that you can hear me. Okay. Don't be picky. I would like to have Anthony. It's okay to be picky. I want the. It seems like the crackling has gotten worse. Okay, great. My apologies, folks. You know what? I've got all my audio ports shut off. Um, no cracking. You can hear me. Okay, thank you. I know there's about a 15-20 second delay. All right, as long as you can hear me, it's cracking, but it's fine. I don't know why it's doing that. It shouldn't be doing that. Let's see. Okay, it's a brand new mic, Jacob. I just bought this mic, and you know what? It works fine until if I move my laptop and go someplace and do my. I'm in a different location today, so if I wind up, oh, that might be the reason. Okay, it just somehow got unplugged a little bit. Maybe that's what it was. So hopefully that's better. Okay, hopefully that's better. So Peter Bicker, um, say, let me go back to your question here, if I can hopefully find it. Oh yeah, can you show us more detailed surface map from the Euro model since they lifted the copyright restrictions? All right, let's try this again. Pivotal Weather it was nice enough to give me permission to do this. I didn't have a chance to go through everything that they have. But please visit their website, pivotalweather.com. And of course, we have Tropical Tidbits, tropicaltidbits.com, and we use their site as well. So thanks to both of them, by the way. So let's see if I can bring that. Let's go to the 0Z run. So you got to bear with me here because I'm just trying to figure out where everything is. Okay. So this is their surface map with the 10-meter wind. So this is from last night. All right, hang on. I know you don't have, I didn't bring the window up. I'm bringing it up now. So this is from last night. And what we're looking at is, and this is another problem too because I forgot my mouse. Um, okay, so this is the surface map. I just brought up the surface map for, it says initial here. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to go to the 186 hour from last night. This should be last night's. So now suddenly I have an, what is this? This is the 0Z. Okay, so Monday the 11th, you've got this 10-12 low that's sitting offshore, but you've got low pressures all the way down into, down off the Florida coast of the Bahamas at 192. There's your low sitting off the Florida coast. So that first low just kind of goes out, that weak wave. So now you've got this low at 192. And then I'll jump to 204. And you can see here, it's got this 96 low winding up and strengthening fairly rapidly. And at 210, there's a really deep low. You got an 88 low. Looks like there's an occluded low pinned back down at about um, 38 and about 71.1, and then another surface low that's out in the point of occlusion at 39.2 and 67.5. But that's a deep, strong gale center here. You've got all the high back in Arkansas, anchored northeastward into southeastern Canada. So you got all this cold air coming down. It was really a very, very well developed system. If we look at the day run today, it was a little less dynamic at 500. And this is actually still the same model run. Okay, so I'm still at the 0Z. So hang on. This is the 216 hour from last night. So this is valid at 7 p.m. next Tuesday night. So you got this wrapped up 984 low here. I mean, that would be, a burial for much of coastal southern New England back to, certainly Long Island and maybe coastal New Jersey, if you want to believe it. Again, that was last night's run. And the 12Z run which I'm going to try to find here. So let's go to the day run, which still had the same idea, but it was a little less dynamic. It winds up with a 99 low here when it's all said and done. Let me just make sure you guys are seeing all this. See right there. Sorry about that. The frame keeps shifting a little bit on me. Doesn't help that I don't have my mouse. I'm just gonna roll it forward here. So So it was a little less deep. It just kind of got to the same. I was looking. I'm not. I honestly. I don't care right now in terms of what the models are doing from print to print. I'm just looking at this point, since we're well over a week away here. You want to look for some sense of similarity, and that's what we're seeing. I'm more interested in the fact that the upper air was very dynamic in my view. Now let's see what it does over the next couple of days, if it holds on to it and how it handles it. That's all we can do at this point. There really isn't too much else that we can do or say about it. Um, Hang on a second. Uh, okay, so I'm not seeing any more complaints about my mic. Yes, Steve Lapointe, you're correct. That all kind of matches up with what we're seeing in the upper air. Um, And here we go. All right, so I think everything looks good. Let me say big hi, by the way. The chairman is back, Scott Briller. Got jumped on the Sunday live stream. I set it up early on Saturday so everybody would know about it. So he got on 23 hours early, but no matter. First always on the board, and he was today. Let's see, Ms. Sphalerite. That's the first I've seen of snow for Euro on Pivotal. I use it for 850 and 500, and mostly I use Weather.us for non-pay Euro. Yeah, apparently, I'm not really sure. A few people mentioned it to me that they lifted the restrictions on the copyright on the European, so now all these maps are suddenly available. I wonder why they did that, but no matter, they did do it, and that's great. So the stuff's out there. The one thing that's going to be interesting to see is that if all this stuff now is available and can be shared without any problem, you're going to see European snow maps appear everywhere. And you know that that's going to drive people crazy. Lisa Nieves, thank you for hitting Super Chat, and thank you for being a Facebook supporter also. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And it's good to see you on here. It's always good to see everybody on board. Yeah, I don't understand, Peter, why they did what they did. I guess somebody will find out along the way and we'll figure it out. But that's why I wanted to double check with the folks at Pivotal and not just arbitrarily put maps up there, because I just don't want to I don't want to get an email from somebody from Euro, saying, hey, you can't do that, or if you want to do that, it's fine. Here's a bill for thousands of dollars. Ruthless Coach Joe Basardi was crowing about the euro now being available in between his 30-minute yammering about climate change. That is great. Well, it's good to hear. So look, if it's available, I'll figure out how to use that site and get a little more savvy with it, and we'll definitely use more of it. So thanks to the folks at Pivotal. Thank you, Tropical Tidbits, as well. Reaver, you're in Facebook jail for talking about the Affordable Health Care Act. Yeah, don't even bother. Okay, I just actually spent a week because they never really did say why. I post. There are a number of groups that have requested that I post my weather in their groups. Some of them are fishing groups, Northern New Jersey Incidents, 100 and Underground, and a few others. And I'm very glad to do it. I've been doing it for years now for some of them, and all of a sudden now they have gotten to where if I share one too many posts, I get put in Facebook jail for a week. They don't tell me that's the real. They just do saying they I get something said that my account would be hacked in. They ask me if I put up these posts. I inevitably say yes. Then I have to change my password. And as soon as I change my password, I get a message that says, "You've been banned from posting for 7 days. You violated policies." Okay. I'm guessing it's because they, now are really uh, cracking down on people sharing too much. But uh, I've been asked to share. Those are all different groups with different people on them, and they've asked me to share. And it's very frustrating because it's a waste of time to even try to appeal. So this is one of the reasons, one of the big reasons why I moving everything over to my weather platform on Patreon. I got if you download the free app and have the notifications turned on, you won't miss any forecasts that I put out or any analysis that I do. They You'll get a notification, and you will. In fact, you will on Facebook. You don't always get notifications that I've posted something. So this way, if you're on the app, you get notifications every time. If you're on Patreon, you get notifications every time. There's all the extra stuff on Patreon as well. So I've just basically been trying to migrate people away from the Facebook platform and at least get on the free apps. And if you want to, you can get on the Patreon platform where you get all the extra weather. So that strategy seems to be working, Reaver. But I understand it's already happened to me 3 times, and each time and then there's been other stuff that they've done to me as well with regards to some tools that I use of theirs for businesses. And uh, they've taken those tools away. They don't tell you why. And it's just very arbitrary. Jimmy Z, yes, I did just see that. Thanks for joining Patreon. Really, really appreciate it. And don't hesitate to message. There's a lot of stuff on there. A lot of the stuff that's on there you're not going to see on the website or on social media. Some of it you do, but you see it without ads. And of course, you can message me and I'll respond to you at any time. Am I surprised, Scott Briller, that Central Park has only had 5-inch snowstorm, 5-inch snows in November? Five. Okay, Scott, explain that because I'm not understanding. Uh, Central Park has only had 5-inch snows in November. I don't know that that's right. If you look at the records in the latter part of the month, there's a 1 foot plus snowstorm in there. So there's in the record. So I'm not sure what you mean by 5-inch snows for the month. Um, so please elaborate. Let's see. But by the way, Scott did bring out an interesting point for New York is that uh, November 4th, starting from this day and going into the month of April, when you look at the records for snowfall, there is a snowfall record for each day. Okay. So on each calendar day, starting from November 4th and going into the month of April, deep into the month of April, it has snowed at least once on that particular calendar day at some point during New York City's weather history. So I would like to look at November 15th is kind of like my magic day, is when the winter, the risk time, November 15th to April 15th. So once we're almost there, it's November 4th. But I'll be curious to see if we wind up seeing some snow out of the weather system. Again, I'm not really that bullish for the one on Thursday, but the one for early, the system for early next week, I think stands a better shot. Okay, folks, coming up on 8:30. So it's been a good solid hour tonight. Thanks very much for being here. My apologies about the audio issues, and hopefully it's sounding better now that I realize I wasn't plugged in all the way. So thanks for being here. Don't forget, download the free weather app, meteorologistjoechaffee.com on Android or on the App Store for iPhones. Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman on Android. My Patreon weather platform, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And we'll just leave it there because that's enough. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Weather in 5 in the morning, and we'll have our regular YouTube live stream tomorrow night. See if I can drag Joe Rayo on with me. Good night, everybody.